Hello, sweet parents. Welcome to the When Our Adult Children Walk Away podcast. My name is Dr. Janet Steinkamp, and during each episode of When Our Adult Children Walk Away, I will provide my professional and personal insights, information and opportunities for your self-reflection and growth, tips and tricks to make every day count, and encouragement to keep moving forward. I'm here to help you dig deep and get down to the root causes so that you can find your way out of the darkness to a positive and lasting relationship. Grab your notebook and a pen, settle into your favorite chair, and let's get to it. In this episode, we are looking at the differences between power, influence, and gaslighting. This episode is foundational to a number of other episodes that are going to be coming out over the next 6 to 8 weeks. We're going to be looking at coercion and coercive control. Every day, day after day, I hear from parents, and I experienced it myself, about a new partner who comes into our adult child's life who we see is negatively influencing our adult child, working to discredit us, pull our adult child away from us, create walls between us. And our adult child may not know yet that that's happening. That's, in a nutshell, coercive control. Understanding this concept is key to being able to find our way through a gatekeeper, coercive partner, and somebody who we see and know is not healthy and is negatively impacting our relationship with our adult child, and perhaps, actually very likely, other relationships in the family as well, maybe even their friends. So let's focus on this for now, and then there's a lot to talk about in the future episodes. So let's start with power. Power, by definition, is the ability to enforce behavior or to make people act in a certain way. We use authority, our position, or even force. Power uses formal authority. It is not an informal tool. It is an authority-based tool to change behavior or to get something out of another person, to change something. Power is also based on the ability to punish or reward. Punishment in the form of taking something away, keeping something from happening, making sure the other person knows that they're in trouble. That's the punishment, the emotional manipulation. Power is a difficult tool in that it can become easy, lazy. It can become a go-to when we're too tired to use influence and to help guide and mentor someone. When we are tired as parents to our younger children, we use power when we don't have time, when we don't have energy. And sometimes because that is what the child understands. It is an appropriate tool to use for their developmental stage. Power in our adult-child relationship is very dangerous. Basically, we have no power. They do not need us. And they will tell us that at every turn if we don't get it. If we don't understand that power is no longer the way to influence what we think needs to be changed, what we think is happening. So an example of parenting through power might be something like you're grounded. And if you don't clean your room, you're going to be grounded for the next 3 days. That is a punishment. It's an appropriate outcome if a child is refusing to clean their room. It is not an appropriate approach if we think our adult child is keeping a messy house, right? That we keep to ourselves. Listen for that episode. There's an episode about staying in our lane and the top 10 things we can do and change in order to stay in the good graces of our adult child. Listen to that episode. I think it is one of the free episodes. All right, so let's move on to influence. Influence, by definition, is the ability to shape attitudes, opinions, behaviors through persuasion, through conversation, through enthusiasm, through support and encouragement. Influence is a way to present our position on something through learning and through example. So it's based on trust and respect, admiration, and it's based on the health of our relationship. In estrangement, when we start feeling like they don't even come to me for my opinion, I used to go to my parents for counsel. They don't come to me for counsel. I'm the last person they come to. We need to think about why that is. Where is the kernel of truth in the relationship we have with our adult child that would prohibit them from coming to us? Are we unable to have that conversation with them unless we move to a power-based conversation? Are we unable to express our opinions and our position on things without guilt? Are we able to communicate without insensitive language or being condescending or arrogant? Can we meet our adult child where they are at and have a relationship that is mutually respectful and trust-based? That is where influence lives. When we can establish that relationship, we can influence. We can have influence. They want us to influence. They ask for that input. And then, of course, we need to know when to stop, because at some point we can move through influence, and if we're not seeing the change or they're not listening the way we think they should, we can move into power. And that shift is a deal breaker with their adult children. They don't want us to have power in their lives. They don't need us to. We need to not try to base our relationship with them on obligation and power. So an example of this might be modeling cleanliness. When my adult daughter and her children lived with us, when she first left her coercive partner and her very unhealthy abusive relationship, which we had watched for 10 years, we were so relieved when she left, and we had had time to figure out what was going on from our perspective and how we could interact in that relationship in a way that empowered her and didn't inflame the coercive partner. In today's pedestrian language, we might refer to him as a narcissist. When she first left that relationship, she came to live with us. She really had nowhere else to go, and I think our relationship had moved into a position where she knew it was a judgment-free zone. She wasn't going to come in here and we weren't going to just start lecturing and telling and informing and using money to get what we wanted, or to, there was no bait. So she felt like she could finally come in, bring her children, who we know and loved and had a great relationship with. In those early days, one of the most difficult things for me was her lack of cleanliness. My God, she did not pick up things. I don't even know. I could never live that way. There were pop cans everywhere. Not pop, but bubbly water cans everywhere. There were dirty clothes everywhere. You couldn't tell dirty from clean. It was just a mass of clothing on the floor. Now, she understood what was clean and dirty, or she just washed it, and then had so much laundry to do. Anyway, it trickles. You know what I'm talking about. The best I could do was ask, is there anything I can do to help? Would it be helpful if I did some laundry? Would it be helpful if we came up with a system to move dirty dishes up into the main kitchen where there's a dishwasher? Would it be helpful if we came up with a system for who did laundry when? Can I do laundry while you're at work during the day? It was all based on my offer and no judgment. I had to put that aside. I understood her life had just collapsed around her. She was in complete shock and disbelief, talk about grief, over the relationship and the life that she thought she was able to create and just couldn't make it happen. She had to walk away. That is an example for, in real terms from my life, think about what it might be in your life. Where are you seeing that there could be change that would make your adult child's life easier, more effective, more efficient, more cost-effective, that you can't really talk about? It's not your business. It's not your place to point a finger and say, why is your house always a mess? Why are you always doing laundry? How come, that stuff doesn't work? You have to get to a place where there's trust, no judgment, and a mutually respectful relationship so you can begin to model behavior and offer to support and influence change with them. I repeat, with them. Key differences between power and influence. Let's look at the source. Power, the source of power usually comes from position, authority, and control. Influence, differently, comes from respect, trust, persuasion. Again, if you know a person who uses coercion to manipulate a relationship, they tend to twist influence in a way that becomes a manipulative weapon. They weaponize influence. So the approach, different. Power in our approach tends to be commands or rules, ultimatums. Approach in influence comes through suggestions, examples, invitations. The relationship of power is hierarchical. It's top down. Those of you who are in my generation, we were brought up in a hierarchical world. Those of you in my generation know what I'm talking about with hierarchical. In the business world today, we tend to see horizontal organizational lines, not the vertical. It used to be, if you're in my generation, that things were predominantly in the business world vertical. There was a boss, everybody knew their place, the orders came down the pike, and everybody knew the marching orders. And you better do it because the boss is the boss. It was rare to have opinions solicited, input, feedback, rare. That was a person who was a natural leader. Today, it is an expectation that employers include input across the board, that people have the opportunity to influence, give feedback, their opinions, satisfaction in their job. That information is solicited, it's surveyed. Again, that's the difference in the relationship aspect. In the outcome, in a power-based relationship, we are looking for compliance. We are looking for somebody to listen and do as they're told. In an influential relationship, we are talking about a willingness to change or agreement. So let's go back to the example I used about my daughter. Is there a method? Would you agree with me that we need a method to bring up the dirty dishes to the main kitchen so they get washed? I'm having a hard time making dinner and getting the table set because I don't have enough silverware. I'm having to run through the house looking for silverware. If there was a way we could take care of that, it would be much more efficient for me. And I think it might feel good to you to live in a situation that isn't cluttered with dirty dishes. So I present my proposal, so to speak, and then she's in agreement because she is grateful that I'm producing dinner at the end of the day, every day for her, her family, for our larger family. And she wants to be agreeable with that. She wants to be helpful. And that's sincere from her. And so we both have a need. We both have an investment. So we come up with a way for the dishes to come up to the main kitchen. It took a while for that system to really get some legs. It was incremental and it took time. And I was willing to invest that time, and she was willing to allow the conversation to continue. That is moving to a willingness to change an agreement. So the long-term effect of a power-based relationship is that it can breed resistance. It can lead to the beginning stages of estrangement. If we don't make that shift from our early years of parenting that are often based in the power differential, because this is what you need to do, this is the right way to do things, this is what integrity looks like, this is what honesty looks like. When our children move into young adulthood and into adulthood, we're no longer their teacher. We can be a role model. We're no longer the teacher. We need to move into a relationship that's based on trust and cooperation, on a level playing field, on mutual respect and trust. That's what they're looking for. That's what we're being asked to do. We need to make that shift. When we begin to make that shift, our adult children understand that we are investing in change to meet their expectations for an adult relationship. If we can let go of our egos and our need and comfort in power, we actually may find that relationship, the trust-based relationship, is more rewarding, more satisfying. It's more fun. It's less work on our part. We can let go of the responsibility to be in charge. We can hand over the baton. When we can make that shift, we can begin to see the progression of estrangement begin to dissipate. The speed and distance that is growing in our relationship can come back into balance. Okay, so how do we have influence and use persuasion and not gaslight? And really not be accused of gaslighting? How do we use or move into a relationship that is based on influence and avoid gaslighting? So by definition, influence is the act of persuading. Gaslighting is when we use that persuasion to manipulate. This difference is critical to understand. It's not easy to understand. It's even harder to look at our behavior if we're trying to move ourselves from power-based interactions with our adult children to influence and persuasion. We need to understand the nuances between that and gaslighting. Gaslighting is one of the most common accusations in estrangement. We're trying to shift the reality for our adult children. They say we're putting guilt on them, and we say, no, we're not. We just want you to be here for dinner. That's gaslighting. If we hear, or when we hear our adult children give us feedback, Mom, I'm tired of the guilt. I don't want to hear the guilt anymore. Dad, stop telling me what to do. I know I need to be to work on time. I know I need to take the car in to get maintenance. I know what an oil change is. I know if I need to get supper ready because it's my turn to cook dinner. We need to understand when we're influencing and when it moves into manipulation, which is gaslighting. So we've just talked about influence by definition. So let's look at the definition of gaslighting. The definition is emotional manipulation, where somebody makes the other person doubt their perception, memory, or sanity, right? Again, cat on the hot tin roof. If you need a movie, Stella gets completely gaslighted. It's an extreme example, and yet that's how our adult children feel. They feel like they're going crazy because we're not just being real with them. They want transparency. They want authenticity. We need to know what those things mean in their vernacular, not in our way of understanding from when we came up from children, but in today's language, in today's communication. What do those things mean? Because they move very quickly into gaslighting. And gaslighting is one of the key elements that leads our adult children to step away. Gaslighting is based on deception, denial, distortion of facts. If we go immediately to denial, we're done. Anything that we say after that is done. We're toast. It's over. Starting to deny and defend is a deal breaker for them. We need to listen to what they're saying, and consider what we're doing or saying that is coming across as gaslighting. And really, we need to ask ourselves, are we gaslighting? I mean, that's a tough thing to have to admit. And yet, the more we can understand it and recognize it, the better we can move it out of our interactions with our adult children. Again, if we can get a hold of this, it moves through all of our relationships to make them healthier. If we are relying on gaslighting to get people to do what we want, if we're trying to manipulate through communication, that's a concern in all of our relationships. And we also can start identifying it when people are gaslighting us. It's so empowering when we can understand that in all of our relationships, and we can recognize it in other people. We can know faster whether that's a relationship we want to invest in. Is this person being authentic with me? I may not like what they say. I may not agree with what they say. I know what they're saying is honest. Then I can deal with it. So gaslighting relies, if we're gaslighting, it relies on lies. It might be more palatable to say to ourselves, mistruths. Are we twisting the truth to get what we want? Are we using contradictions? Are we changing the facts to get what we want out of a situation? My daughter's ex-partner is a master at this, a master. And what's fascinating is to watch other people fall for it. I mean, it's crazy. He can say one story to get somebody to believe what he wants them to believe, and 15 minutes later in a different story, change it to get him what he needs in that conversation, and people don't even catch it. They don't even hear it because they're not educating themselves, training themselves to recognize manipulation, to understand when people use influence and persuasion to manipulate. The better you become at that, the more effective you will be in supporting your adult child, having authentic conversations and interactions with them, and recognizing coercion and coercive control in relationships. Right? This is fundamental to these upcoming episodes where we're going to talk deeply about coercion, deeply about coercive control. This form of abuse, and it is abuse, is becoming recognized in the court system, in the legal system. Coercion is becoming more known and recognized to our mental health providers, to our law enforcement and emergency response people. We need to keep up with the times, people. We need to understand what it is, and we need to understand what it is in today's terms, in our relationships. Because if we don't understand it, we can become coercive and we can become victims of coercion without even understanding what's happening. So thank you for listening to this episode. I appreciate you taking the time. Until you listen to the next episode or start digging into coercion, I want you to start looking in your life for where these manipulations exist. I mean, it's everywhere. It's at the Home Depot paint counter. How do you get what you want from this kid who really has probably not had a lot of training and is just trying to do their job? Most likely it's a very, very close to their first job, if not a first job. And we have the power. We're the customer. So how are we going to be fair, honest, transparent, patient, talk through what we need, help them understand, and help them get us what we need through influence and transparency and honesty, and not a shortcut of power or manipulation? It's everywhere. Remember, you can email me directly, janet@jesteinkamp.com. You can pop over to whenourdadultchildrenwalkaway.com and send me a message through the message feature on my website. Sit with this topic. Take it in, try it on, watch for it, and be ready when you start listening to the future episodes on coercion, coercive control, abuse in relationships, gatekeepers. This is so fundamental to many aspects of estrangement and to your circumstances. All right, until we talk again, until the next episode, I want you to be brave. I want you to look for the kernel of truth in your circumstances, in what you bring to the relationship. And I want you to give yourself grace. Don't be too hard on yourself. We're going to learn about ourselves in little bites. And I want you to know you are not alone.